Living the Dream, LTD. Anyone who knows me will know that I love using those three letters. When most people look at those three letters, they don't normally think of the thing that I think of. They normally think of it as limited. They normally see that at the end of a company, for example. But I want to just challenge that and think, what is your perspective on those three letters? And when I say LTD, I think living the dream. 99% of people may think limited. And my point is that perspective is everything. So when it comes to life and it comes to living the dream, it's all about perspective. So, the dream. What is the dream? Clearly, if you've been listening to my 12 Days of Christmas, you can see that I used to think that living the dream was found in worldly things. I used to think that happiness, love, peace, and other things could be fulfilled in the world. And that's what I used to think, and I think that's what many people think. Living the dream, I'm going to go get more things for myself, going to get more money, going to get more of this, and that'll make me happy. Ultimately, it does for a certain amount of time, but it only satisfies for a while. And here's a little story. You know I like my stories. Imagine that I'm married to a woman. I'm not married, but imagine if I'm married and I buy her some flowers. Okay. Now, she puts the flowers on the table, and imagine this. If she, instead of thanking me, ends up talking to the flowers instead of talking to me. Instead of thinking I'm gonna spend time having a relationship with the person that bought me the flowers, she then just says, forget about me, and I'm just gonna spend time talking to the flowers and have a relationship with the flowers, creating things. And I just feel like a lot of the times we've actually forgot about the creator that's given us all these things, and instead we're worshipping the things that he's given us instead. Ultimately, that was what I was trying to do. I was trying to gain the whole world because I thought that was going to make me happy and successful. I was trying to climb this company and thought, yeah, that's what I'm going to try and do. But there's a great verse in the Bible that says, for what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? That's in Mark 8:36. Interesting verse, and I used to think, I was following the ways of the world, but I realised that actually in the world, no one really quite knows what they're doing. And for me, it's like the verse in Matthew 15:40, and that says, it's like the blind leading the blind. And before, I definitely feel like I was blind in the world, just blind to what the world was telling me to do with my life, and I was following the blind. Ultimately, I just feel like we're just chasing our tails, trying to get more of these created things for ourselves, and there comes a point where you think, well, it doesn't satisfy anymore. There has to be something bigger than that. Is life all about living to retire, or is life about living to inspire? And what's more important than these created things is actually the creator, and that's why I've spent more time looking at God and trying to have a relationship with him. And there's a great picture in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, which talks about there being two paths. There's a wide path and there's a narrow path. And it says that this wide path, many people are on, and those people are following after the things of the world. They're chasing after things of the world, going around, blind leading the blind, chasing the tails, the wide path. But there's a narrow path which leads to eternal, everlasting life. And it says that few people find it. Jesus Christ came to the world at Christmas time, remember that, and he said that he is the way, the truth, and life. He is the narrow path. That's the way to get to the Father. It's about not following the ways of the world, but instead trusting in Jesus Christ as your Saviour and then having a relationship with God. And that leads to eternal life. And very few people find it. And it's all about changing your perspective from the world into bigger than the world. Stop thinking about things that are seen, thinking about things that are unseen. And it's interesting that the whole world that we live in is now focused on the letter I, focused on iPads, iMacs, iPads, iPhones, selfies. Everything's all about inwardly, focus inwardly instead of looking outwardly, focusing on worldly things instead of looking at the bigger picture, looking at God. And why is that then? Why is that there's few people that find it? Well, the world is just polluted with so many distractions and temptations. I've mentioned those things in the video, the things about being busy, having abundance of possessions, pornography, money, wanting to be rich, sex, bad role models, lies are being told all the time. Those are the things that keep us distracted and give us temptations to miss the bigger picture in life. And I've spoken to so many people on a Friday night when I did that Tea and Toast outreach that say, I've been brought up in a Christian family, yes, but my parents stopped going to church a few years ago, and I thought, why is that? And I do believe it's because the world is now flooded with all these distractions and temptations now. And it breaks my heart because even though we seem to have these big, massive, plasma, huge screens, I just feel like we're missing the bigger picture in life, and that's having a relationship with God. So the 12 days of Christmas, there's always been a common theme, and there's a person at the centre of all that, Jesus Christ. And that's the real meaning of Christmas. That's why he's the centre of these videos. Because through Jesus Christ we can have that relationship with God. And the world will always lead you to feeling broken, thinking you can have more, and almost like tying you down and trapping you and chaining you down to things of the world. But these stories about me and my testimony, how Jesus set me free from a lot of those things, and I believe I'm way more richer and satisfied than I ever possibly was 3 years ago. And I used to always say that Christianity is boring, church is boring, the Bible's boring, I don't know any Christians who are normal or weird, but all that changed when I properly understood what it means to be a Christian. I properly actually studied the Bible myself. I found a church that actually I can relate to. I understood how to be around people who were normal people but still believed in God and was still a Christian. And I challenge anyone who still has those perceptions, that perspective I told you about, to just look at the bigger picture. There's one last verse I want just to cling on to, and there's one verse in particular that really changed my life. It's Romans 12 verse 2. It says, "Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but instead be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will." God's will, his plan for me and my life is way bigger than I could ever possibly imagine. And it's all about me trying to not conform anymore to the patterns and ways of the world. What I thought was the way to go in my life, to conform to the world, it was empty and I wasn't being transformed. Instead, I was just conforming all the time. And I challenge everyone to not conform and be transformed. Just change your mind, have a bigger perspective, change your perspective on the world and see what happens. God's good, pleasing and perfect will. Basically, God's plan, basically God's dream. And God's dream is far better and greater than my dream. And it's not my dream, I'm not living my dream, I'm living his dream. Telling this story, giving God the glory. LTD!